ways that you will kind of sustain yourselves. This is hard, you know what I'm saying? Especially hearing the experiences that you guys have already had. So, just to reiterate, why do you guys personally protest? And then also, what are ways in which y'all are able to sustain yourself through a movement that is this difficult and also this personal?
Well, I think for me, and I just want to clarify one point first. I don't want to specify particularly that, like, I would believe that black women are, as a whole, less impacted by policing, but just my positionality being an economically stable white passing, and having other relative privileges and stuff like that, there are reasons why I also, as a black woman, do have less negative impacts of policing than other black men. But I just wanted to specify because I don't want to minimize other black women's experiences with the carceral system. But to answer your question, why I protest, it's very obvious to me that right now, I mean, black people are denied humanity on all fronts in the world. We are objects, and blackness is commodified, and it's very obvious that the only time, quote unquote, value, and I say quote unquote because that means value within the realm of a capitalistic society, is assigned to us black people is when we are buying into this increasingly fascist but also neoliberal, neo-colonial, elitist type of whatever government economy that we are about to have, that we're moving in the direction of with Trump, with the 1%, or really the 0.001% getting more and the rest of us getting less. And so that being said, it's very clear that racism has been used as one of the most powerful ways to manipulate white people into believing that they truly have any type of inherent genetic superiority to black people. But like, we just know it's all a lie at the end of the day. And ultimately, why do these lies exist is because I personally feel like they're masquerading many of these other, like I gestured to earlier, issues. But I don't think enough people are aware of that. And that's always what I'm trying to talk about when I protest. It's always why I protest, because I realize person to person, there is no type of imbalance. There's absolutely no basis for racism. But why do we believe it? Because there's been so many systems that have been constructed to try to create a facade from the real things that create imbalances of power in the world, which is money and capitalism. And like, rich people are like billionaires and stuff like that are just sick. And I think like that's going to be a large component behind actually getting traction and trying to create some of these social movements that people notice more so than ones that just are not on the news. I think I forgot the second part of the question.
And how are you able to sustain yourself through, having actively been in the street and with everything that's going on?
In short, I honestly have not done a good job. I've tried my very best, but I've had to take a lot of steps back from organizing in the last 2 months. I won't go like specifically into detail, but again, because I'm trying to be as frank in my experience as I possibly can. It's just really and truly not safe for people oftentimes who are organizing, who are just committed to really like full-heartedly just trying to create better, whatever that means, because unfortunately in a lot of organizing and activist spaces, there are a lot of people with ulterior motives. There's so much alignment with like local politicians, also with churches in different places that all have different powers, and then also way too much affiliation and collaboration with police in protests, which is not a thing in my opinion, like to collaborate with the police. And if you're supposedly about defunding the police in a lot of ways. And so it's just honestly been something where I don't feel like I haven't been able to find a sustainable way to keep my foot in the way I was doing it before, because it is just, it's so entrenched with people with ulterior motives.
Yeah. And going off what Sydney said, I guess I'll answer like backwards about sustaining oneself through these protests. Yeah, it is really hard. I've come out and I've tried to tell people on my Instagram, because I remember there were people at some point who were asking me about protests, asking me about what things were important to me, what policies I hope to see be passed and stuff like that. And I just remembered like telling people a lot like that if we want this revolution or for these protests to be able to be consistent and to sustain for a long period of time, it's necessary that you almost treat this like a job, and at some point you have to clock out. You have to give your time to clock out. Okay, you need to take time for yourself. And for me, it was really hard because Dinah saw, I remember I was posting poetry about the protests, and I was tired. I wasn't sleeping. Because one thing I can say definitely that may be different for our generation compared to other generations is that there's no time off. There's almost impossible for it to be time off that's consistent. Not just because we are, as Black people, constantly having to face the system of oppression, but because also we have online, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, and where especially in that hot, ticket time when it was nothing but talk, even people who don't talk about it now after posting their black squares was talking about it. And we was seeing a lot of things. It was like all trauma at once. We had to relive the Sandra Bland murder. We had to relive Tamir Rice. We had to relive then we had Breonna Taylor. We had George. We were going through a lot because we were reliving old trauma, current trauma, and new trauma, because then things were just coming out right after the other. And I would come from a protest, and then I would come home, and I'll be on my Instagram, and I'd be fighting with people, or I'd be going back and forth, or then I'd be trying to post an educational video, or I'd try to find some protests going around in Chicago, because I knew there were people that were looking to me for that. And then I had people asking me questions. I had people, on Twitter trying to involve me. And so that constantly kept me on a roll 24/7, to the point where I wasn't even sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't really eating. I wasn't really taking care of myself, to the point where I would be on my phone all night going back and forth, or typing about things, or addressing things, or being like, you know what, we need to talk about this. And then the sun would be coming up, and I'd be like, oh, this is like the 5th day I didn't go to sleep. And then I'm going to a protest in the middle of the sun with one water bottle in my backpack. That was a problem. I needed to take time for myself. So for me, sustaining myself has always been about one thing that my mom told me, that really helped me. She was like, Black joy is revolutionary. Black happiness, Black laughter is revolutionary during these times. She said, so that means that you focusing on your happiness and you putting joy into the world, even during this time, is outstanding. So I had to take time where I turned my phone off, went outside, and just took a walk. I just cooked me some food. I made me a little cooking show video, or I did something that made me happy, because I needed to realize that this world wants me to burn myself out. This system wants me to become so enthralled with the trauma they've given me that my life is nothing but trauma. But by living outside of that in myself is making sure that my children and my children's children don't have to live in a system in which I've had to live through, my family's had to live through, and the ones before me had to live through. So that's what's been important for sustaining. For me, what's been important and why I protest has always been about more than equality, equity. More than equality, equity. We need a seat at a table, and we're not going to wait for you to give it to us. We will create a seat at the table if we need to. I protest because this has to stop. And we're not just going to continue to be complicit, or continue to just sit by, or continue to have a system that tells us, I don't care. I'm only going to care about you when it becomes political. I'm only going to care about you when it's going to give me something. No, you're going to care about me now, or you're at least going to respect me. And if you don't respect me, you're out. You're leaving. And that's what these protests meant to me, was I mean business, and I mean it now. And I want justice, and I want it now. And if I'm not sleeping, you're not sleeping. So I protest because I want children to be able to play in a park and not have a problem. I want black people to be able to go into a Starbucks and not have a problem. I want black people to be able to pull over from the side of the road because they had one or two drinks and they just want to sit down for a minute and not have a police officer go up to them and then them not survive the night. I want black people to be able to just live a life. We're not asking for anything beyond, beyond this realm. We are not asking for anything extraordinary. We are not asking for special expectations. We are asked for the basic human respect to be treated like anyone else. And that if you don't like us, then mind your business. And if you have a bias, stay off the force. Matter of fact, take away the force. Matter of fact, defund the police. Matter of fact, take away capitalism. Matter of fact, since we're here, let's talk about misogyny. You know what? Matter of fact, since we're here, let's talk about it. What I like about this generation and what I like about us protesting is every day we're like, you know what, you want to talk about it? We're going to talk about it. And so every day we were having constructive conversations. We were addressing the fact that for the first time, I feel like black women have been highlighted during a movement. You know what I'm saying? Black women have constantly been the forefront of every movement and been forgotten. The black women in this generation were all up in the camera like, yeah, it's me, out here. Where y'all at? The men, y'all here too, but y'all in the back. But I'm here. That's right. So, yeah, that's why I protest. Because one day, I'm going to be somebody's mama. And they're going to be like, you know what? My mama was out there boxing in the police's face and was like, you not about to treat me or anybody else like this no more. And she went like this days on end.
Period.
So that's why I protest.
Period. And I think also, like, y'all both really said something interesting. Like, protesting is about talking about it. Like, Sydney, you said what has been spewed has been lies. Lies about who black people are. We're people, you know what I'm saying? And protesting, can almost be seen as a way of telling another story, telling the truth, spreading, what we truly are about, just that we're human, we're present, we're here, and all we want to do is live fulfilling lives just like everybody else. Jon, did you have anything else to say?
Totally like crying, laughing. That was like so funny, but she made great points. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. Note to the opposition. I remember President Trump saying Democrats don't want to talk about law and order. You want to talk about law and order? Let's talk about law and order. We want law and order too. If you want law and order, you should be protesting out in the streets too. Because to get law and order, you have to dismantle the institutional barriers that are holding black people back and have been committing violence against black people. That's the only way you're going to get law and order. If you keep those institutions in place, the symptoms are going to keep coming up because you're not fixing the illness. If you want law and order, you should be protesting in the streets for Black Lives Matter too. And like you said, to be able to close an Instagram window, shut down your internet browser, post a black square and leave is a privilege. Because for many black people, you can't close those tabs. You can't close the tabs in your mind. I can go off of Instagram, but when I step outside and I go on a run in a predominantly white neighborhood, I'm scared. I'm scared. I used to pass this house every day on my running route with a Confederate flag, and like my heart rate would go instantly up. And it wasn't because I was running faster. It was because I was so scared to pass it and that something might happen to me. It's just a reality that black people live with day in and day out. And it's not something that's going to be solved with a black square.
Yeah, so this conversation was deep. There is so many layers, as we can see. We have yet to even scratch the surface. But Sequoia, Sydney, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time out. It was lovely to hear about your experiences, lovely to hear about your stories. We are thankful that y'all are out there, that y'all are doing the hard work, and we hope that you too are also taking time for yourselves, mentally, physically, emotionally.